Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Asmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedyat Ravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we have a new person. Tell us who you are.
I'm Travis.
Hi, Travis. I'm Jim.
I'm Jim.
Sophia.
Sophia, nice to meet you.
Mike.
Mike, nice to meet you.
And we have our international group on the Zoom.
Oh, wonderful. Cool. Awesome.
Yes. So we have Jory in Maryland, and we have Shweta and Uday in Chennai, and we've got Deepa in Mumbai, and Mark in Vancouver, Washington, and
Wow.
all over the world.
Awesome.
So how did you find us, and do you know anything about Gita?
I found the group on Meetup.
Great.
And I'll try to find the most concise way. I've always had a spiritual bent about me, and I've had a lot of profound.
We're all bent.
Yeah. Experiences throughout my life. In the past few years, I had a very powerful kind of opening where I was in a relationship. How do I tell this story? It was just some interesting and people came into my life, the partners, it's two women that I dated that were, their names rhymed and were almost the same. They were both of Hindu, Indian descent, and
so it's not totally new.
Well, what I'm saying is that I had some very strange, powerful cosmic experiences, and it was kind of like through them the Gita came into my life.
Great.
And then I spent a lot of time alone and throughout the pandemic, and I've probably read it, I don't know, 11 times or so in the past couple years. Which
translation did you?
The one I've been reading is the Jack Howley, A Walkthrough for Westerners.
I don't know this one.
It's really amazing. It's really, really, really good. Yeah.
Well, tonight we'll be using the translation that my teacher did, Swami Chinmayananda. So Deepa will chant it in the Sanskrit, and then we'll break it open in English, so you'll get a chance to hear the beautiful poetry as well. So, and we start promptly at 6:30. So if you come back, we open up at 6. So you can come early, but don't come late.
Okay, gotcha.
The Gita is there if you want.
Yeah, we have copies of it here if you want to.
Okay.
All right. So, Mark, do you know where we are in the text? We're in chapter 4.
Number 27.
That's all? Okay. I thought we were in the 30s. Deepa ji, can you help us out, please?
Sure, yeah. Sarvanindra.
Hang on. So we're in
Sarvanindra.
chapter 4, verse 27. Okay. I'm sorry, Deepa. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Sarvani indriya karmani prana karmani chapare atma samyama yogamne atma samyama yogagno juvanti jnana deepite. Others again sacrifice all the functions of the senses and the functions of the breath, vital energy, in the fire of the yoga of self-restraint, kindled by knowledge.
So in this section, Vyasa, our poet, is talking about the various ways in which we can practice. And he started it off. Remember last week we talked about Deva Yajna and Brahma Yajna. Deva means the gods, but here it means the presiding principle over a field of human endeavor. Brahma Yajna means this non-mediated reveling in my self-nature. So, practically speaking, what does it mean? Who can tell me what meditation is? What is a meditation? Very interesting question.
Being present.
That's part of it. The principle is this: a single-pointed mind is as good as no mind. So especially in the earlier stages of our practice, we have what we call in Yoga Sutra dharana, concentration, bringing the mind to a single point. It then develops into dhyana meditation. We use that object of meditation to quieten the mind. So last week we talked about how, in essence, anything can become a meditation. So the foolish person dances with an object of the senses, and when desire and object of desire become one, their mind says, oh, that's where joy, where happiness is. Then I'm compelled to want to repeat it because it sows that deep impression, the vasana. But the yogi can dance with an object in the world. Desire and object of desire become one. Oh, that stopped my mind. Krishna, Krishna. So we begin to own our ananda. It's not in the object. The object was just a medium by which I was able to get a taste, a kiss of the bliss of Brahman. Brahma Yajna, sacrifice to Brahman, means I developed the trick of the yogi to have a non-mediated experience of myself. Now, this is so important because if we don't develop that capacity to revel in the self, to tune up the mind, independent of the world, there's still going to be some attachment to the world, which is going to be a recipe for sorrow. And then last week, we had a couple, I can't remember what the practices were, but this week, give us the two that he gave us in this week again, Deepa. I'm having a senior moment. There was the breath, and what was the one before that?
All the functions of the senses and the functions of the breath. Yes.
So, I've been reading this book, The Noble Eightfold Path by Bhikkhu Bodhi. Excellent book. And he's talking about the Buddhist practice. How does my sister-in-law say it? Lose your mind and come to your senses. So when you're walking, for example, in the park and you see a rose, it's just the direct sensation. You see a leaf, it's just the direct sensation. And you see the dog poop, and it's just direct perception. And a piece of paper, it's just paper. Without the superimposition of all my stories. Oh, I really like roses. Oh, gee, I wish I could grow roses, but I'm in an apartment. Oh, that smells terrible, that dog poop. Oh, why did somebody throw that paper on the ground? You know how our minds go through these stories of likes, dislikes, memory, and the past, and all that sort of stuff. We want to endeavor to lose our mind and come to our senses here. This is the practice. So we have the direct perception of the phenomenal world. And it becomes incredibly intense. I'll give you a true story. So I was talking with a student who had gone to this sound healing workshop. All sorts of things with sound, you know. This is not a new science, by the way. Tibetans have a whole tradition of it. But his mind got really quiet. And it was in the evening, and he walked outside, and he looked up at the stars. And it was so intense. So beautiful, because his mind was so quiet. Very, very wonderful and powerful way to meditate. Now, we had several last week. I'm not going to repeat those. You can go back and reread them and reread Swamiji's commentary on those particular practices. The second one he's talking about here is the whole science of what we call pranayama. Now, prana is not breath. Prana is bioenergy. It is the life force that moves through both the gross and the subtle body. And it's divided into what we call the Panchavayu, the 5 subtle airs. I'll go through them briefly. So first is the main prana, which is inhalation. Then there's apana, which is exhalation and elimination. Then there is dhyana, which is digestion. Then there's samana, which is circulation, the circulatory system. It's also the glands as well. And then there's udana, which controls thinking. What's the relationship between the bioenergy and thinking? Almost every religious tradition that I've come in contact with, in some form, suggests prayer and fasting. What's the difference between a fast and a diet? Tell me.
Fast has religious purpose.
Well, spiritual purposes. Yeah. And what happens when you fast, when you deny food to the body? The prana starts to move to the internal organs. And the udana, which governs the thinking, goes. So my spiritual hero, Sri Ramana Maharshi, in one of the books of conversations between him and disciples, one of the disciples says, Bhagwan, how do I achieve a sattvic mind? Sattvic mind is a pure mind. Now, granted, this was Bhagwan's answer for this disciple. You don't necessarily have to say this is going to work for everybody. But he says, eat sattvic food. This is why the scriptures suggest a pure diet, a light diet, fresh foods, vegetarian. Because it will affect your thinking. So, those of us who may study Raja Yoga, that's a parallel tradition to the Vedanta. In the Yoga Sutras, we go through the 8 limbs of yoga. Is this something you're familiar with, Travis? Yes,
the 8 limbs of yoga?
Yeah.
Vaguely.
Vaguely, okay.
I'm not.
Okay, well, we'll go over them. The first 2 are called the yamas and niyamas, which are codes for moral and ethical behavior. Things like ahimsa, nonviolence, satyam, truthfulness, saucham, purity. I won't go through them all. There are 10 total. First 2 stages. Don't be a jerk and don't be a slob. Then comes asana. So when you go take a yoga class in the West now, what they mean is you're going to learn yoga postures. Those are called asanas. What do asanas do? 2 things. First is, it's like doing intense, deep tissue body work on your own body. Because all the knots in my psyche also show up as knots in the body. Anybody here had any deep tissue body work like rolfing or something like that? They hit a knot and you go, ah, all these emotions come up. Did you have that happen?
Yes.
Yeah. Why? Because the body and the mind are essentially a gross and subtle form of the same thing. But doing asana is a way to work out those kinks in the body. Now, it does another thing experientially. A lot of people don't realize. So when you're doing an asana, a yoga posture, you have to be able to become aware of your body in space. So you know you're doing the posture right. So the yoga instructor will say, you know, you're tilting to the right. You want to be upright. No, you're leaning forward. No, your arms are not, you know, at the same height. One is higher than the other, etc. So you begin to become aware of your body in space. This ultimately gives us the direct experience that my body is an object of awareness. What do I mean by that? Can you see the candy jar on the table?
Yes.
You're not a candy jar. The candy jar is an object of awareness. But most of us running around thinking, I am my body. But when you begin to have the direct experience, because you slow down and you're being mindful and conscious, you begin to have the direct experience that I am the knower of the body. I am not the body. That's the third limb of Raja Yoga. Then comes pranayama. We learn control of the bioenergy by learning to control the breath. There are all sorts of different yogas that do this. If any of you ever studied Kundalini Yoga, that's basically pranayama. Kriya Yoga, any of you in the Paramahansa Yogananda tradition, Kriya Yoga is basically pranayama. So through visualization and through various breathing techniques and locks in the energy and stuff like that, you make the snake a staff, meaning the Kundalini. So you awaken the various chakras until finally the Kundalini rises and the 1,000-petaled lotus opens. A very valid form of yoga. Now, in Raja Yoga, after you study pranayama, then you do pratyahara, which is sense withdrawal. In our tradition, we usually use the term uparati. So the 5 senses you learn to be able to bring them within and not be disturbed by the externals. Then comes dharana, concentration. We talked about that briefly already. Then dhyana, meditation. Ultimately, meditation culminates in self-inquiry. Who am I? What is my essential nature? And that finally culminates in samadhi. The last thought is thoughted before the next thought has started thoughting, with the attentive faculty and trigger. Who is it or what is it? Knows both the thoughts and the space between. So here, when he talks about pranayama, he is indicating that whole practice of Raja Yoga. Now, the Raja Yogis say, oh, the Vedantins, they're just scholars. And the Vedantins say, oh, you're never going to know God like that. But one of my favorite texts is Yoga Vasishta. And we study a version of it, the Yoga Vasishta Sangraha, the essence of Yoga Vasishta. And he gives equal weight to both Raja Yoga and Jnana Yoga, the path of self-inquiry. They are both valid. Any thoughts on this?
Can you say he, Shankar? He gets that he validates both of them?
No, a fellow by the name of Valmiki is supposed to have written Yoga Vasishta, though probably it's someone much later. It's the story of the enlightenment of Lord Rama. It's probably maybe 100, 150 years before Shankara. It's maybe 1,000 years after the Gita, though. Yeah. All right, next verse, please.
Dravya yagyastapo yagya yoga yagyastatha pare swadhyaya jnana yagyascha yataya samshita vrataha. Others again offer wealth, austerity, and yoga as sacrifice, while the ascetics of self-restraint and rigid vows offer study of scriptures and knowledge as sacrifice.
And I think in American English, we say ascetics.
Ascetics.
The Brits may say ascetics, I'm not sure. So yeah, let's parse this again. So what was the first idea?
Others again offer wealth, austerity, and yoga as sacrifice.
Okay, so what they do is here yoga is a reference to anything we do that yokes the mind to the infinite. But how can you offer wealth? So there's two ways to look at this. I think the best way is to take on the practice of dana. Who can tell me what dana means? Generosity. Yes. Yes. Money is not an item. It's not a thing. Money is an energy. It is, in fact, stored labor. That's what money is. And many of us who have fear of financial insecurity think that I'm going to become secure by getting more money. Later on, Krishna will say, no one is more fearful than a wealthy person. He's not saying there's virtue in being poor. Nobody thinks about money more than a poor person. To a starving man, God is bread. So what does it mean? What we find is if we develop this understanding that it's a beneficent universe that conspires for our well-being if we let it. And we do our swadharma, our duty in the world, letting go of our attachment to the results. And work on this attitude of generosity. We got to be careful. Some people give charity and it's all about ego. Going back to the 1980s, it was like 1984 and 85. I was one of the professional singers in the Grace Cathedral Choir of Men and Boys. Wonderful gig. If you go into Grace Cathedral, Travis, have you ever been there?
I haven't, no.
Oh, it's the big Episcopal Cathedral.
I know. Yeah.
So the nave is very long, and then you go up these stairs, and you're in the great choir with the stalls on each side. And there on the floor of the great choir in the sanctuary, emblazoned in gold, it says, "To the glory of God and the memory of William J. Crocker." Equal billing there. So the Crocker family donated the land and the money to build the cathedral at the beginning. But you better be sure they wanted recognition for it. So if you go to the opera or the ballet or the symphony and you look in the back of the program, what do you see in the back of the program? The donors. Corporate donors, $10,000 and more, you know, extra special circle, they list them. Then big time donors, you know, the amounts they've given more than such and such. So you get all the way down to the peons who only donated, you know, $100 or less. You know. People want their names, the people at the symphony and the ballet and the opera. No, they're giving their money and they want the recognition. That's not done.
Can be so much more subtle too, right?
Oh, you got it. Go ahead, share.
Oh, well, I suppose just seemed like a little more obvious ways, but it's. I know for myself, I'm always looking for the ego in myself, and it's remarkable how subtle it can be. I have to hide it from myself for it to be able to be there.
Yes. So one of the things you will learn in the Hebrew scripture, we have the injunction to tithe, which is to give away 10% of your income. And if I remember, I think it's in the book of Malachi, and help me out here, Mike, if I get it wrong. Bring unto me all your tithes into the storehouse, and prove me now herewith that I will not pour out a blessing upon you, pressed down, shaken up, and overflowing, such there will not be room enough to contain it. Something like that.
That's pretty close.
Yeah. And what you will find is if you begin the regular practice of generosity, your fear of financial insecurity will leave you. Not saying you're going to be rich. You will be rich in something much more than money, but you'll have the direct experience. There will always be. And in India, we have the cultural tradition of Guru Dakshina. This work cannot be bought or sold. Cannot purchase self-realization. You will be left out if you're poor. But Indians have been taught that it's what we do. We support the temples, we support the gurus, we support the spiritual culture. Just what we do. And if all you have is a leaf, a flower, or some water, Krishna will say, I accept it. That's fine. But it's the act of generosity. So if you're freaked out about money, start with something new. Give something away. Don't have money, you can give other stuff. Any thoughts on this practice? All right.
Jim,
So
asked a question. This is fine.
Yes, go ahead.
Jim. So my question is it ever a good policy sort of fake it till you make it in this case, which is, let's say, for example, somebody has a fear of financial insecurity, but do they donate? Should they only donate when they have a really good intention and like they really have that right intention being generous, or should they start donating in the hopes that that would change their attitude towards money over time?
Of course, it is a tool to help change your attitude, but don't think of it as magic. Oh, if I donate $500 to the temple, I'll get rich. That's not the way you want to think about it. You want to think about, I have fear, so I'm going to act and think contrary to my contracted fear. And I'm going to practice some generosity, even if I'm terrified to do it. And start with little bits and see if that doesn't start to change the quality of your heart. Is that useful, Fang?
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
And are you still in Bali?
Still here, going to India in a couple of days.
Oh, great. There she is in paradise. Good punya. You must have been very generous in many lives. All right, what's the next idea, Deepa?
While the ascetics of self-restraint and rigid vows.
I think we skipped one. First was wealth, and then what came after wealth?
After wealth, it's austerity and yoga.
Yes, posterity. I'm not sure what he means by that. It's just that it could be that you want the family to continue to be taken care of and successful as your duty.
No, austerity.
Austerity. Oh, I thought you said posterity. Austerity means, is the word he's using tapas?
Yoga yagyasta. Yoga yagya. That's
the sacrifice of yoga. That's what that is. But austerity, basically the word we usually use is tapas. And there is no great value in flesh hating. Both people in the East and the West can get caught up in that trap. That if I punish the nasty old flesh, then the spirit will be free. It doesn't work. The austerity here means I start to become aware of the habituated, indulgent tendencies of my mind, the addictive relationships that I have with various things in the world. And they can be things like relationships as well as objects or stuff. And I do a little bit of not necessarily acting on that. Now, people can be attached to their misery. There are people who are very attached to, say, a story of abuse as a child. They are truly victims if they're an abused child. But if you're 30 years old, you're not in danger. But minds can keep returning to that suffering. And that can drive people. They have an unconscious identification. I'm an abused person. I have PTSD. I did all this suffering. I had a really tragic childhood. And that can be an attachment too. So the tapas, the austerity again is, can I begin to let it go? Practice forgiveness, acceptance, turn my mind into more positive, more auspicious modes of thinking and behaving. There's a saying that the Master Jesus had, which I love. Jews have just as many purity codes as Hindus, if not more. There's 613 laws that a Guj is supposed to behave. So if you practice all these austerities, you don't eat this, you wash that, you do this on this day and on that day. And Jesus said a person is defiled not so much by what they put into their mouth, but by what comes out of it. We are far more defiled by hateful speech, by gossip, this sort of thing. So these are the ideas of austerity that Krishna's talking about. So it was wealth, austerity, and yoga was the third one. I think you're muted, Deepa.
Yeah, wealth, austerity, yoga, and then while the ascetics
may apply to the austerity. Yoga here just means union of anything we do that brings us to that. It could also make a reference to, again, the whole Raja Yoga tradition. And then the next one is what's the next idea?
While the ascetics of self-restraint and rigid vows offer study of scriptures and knowledge.
So here's the reference to those people. In the old-timey days, it was just men. Now there are women who take the vows of sannyas. A sannyasi is a renunciate who has chosen to give up the world. They do take vows of non-ownership. You have maybe 3 kurtas, one you wear, one you wash, one you're mending. You have a begging bowl, and you're allowed to beg once a day. You can go to 3 houses. Bhiksha, bhiksha, begging for food. No, slam. Go to the second house. Bhiksha, bhiksha. We have nothing. Slam. Go to 3 houses. You don't get fed in 3 houses, you are hungry. Maybe living in a cave. Maybe living in a simple hut. The ideal of this is Swamiji's guru, Swami Tapovana, who had a little kutia, a little mud hut up in Uttarkashi. Not only was he a man of the deepest realization, but he was Kshotriya, extremely well versed in the scriptures. Great Vedanta scholar. Some people, that is their meditation. Swamiji would call reveling in the halls of Vedanta, where this swadhyaya, the self-study, itself becomes a meditation. All of these are ways to stop the mind, to bring it to a single point. Any questions about this? Next verse.
Apane juvati pranam, prane panam tatha pare, pranapana gati rutva, pranayama parayanaha. Others offer as sacrifice the outgoing breath in the incoming, and the incoming in the outgoing, restraining the courses of the outgoing and incoming breaths, solely absorbed in the restraint of breath.
So here is a far more direct allusion to pranayama of the yogis. So the prior use of prana can be interpreted this way. Who here perhaps has studied a martial art? Or like Fang. Fang has studied Reiki. So if you study Aikido, Ki means the vital energy. Tai Chi Chuan, that's you feel the vital energy. Or if you become a Reiki master, you're learning how to work with bioenergy. That can be also understood as the study of the prana. Here he's directly talking about what I mentioned before, pranayama as a practice. Going on, next verse.
Apare niyatahara pranam praneshu juvati sarve pyete yakya vido yakya kshapita kalmashaha. Others with well-regulated diet offer vital airs in the vital air. All these are knowers of sacrifice, whose sins are destroyed by sacrifice.
Yes. So here he's saying you can bring the mind to a state of greater purity by paying attention to your diet. There's a big movement now, at least in California, probably across the nation now, of a plant-based diet. Most yogis in India will be vegetarians, but they usually do milk products as well. An even purer diet would be a plant-based diet. You can do it for ethical reasons. You can do it for health reasons. But here, Krishna is saying you can also be conscious of your diet because it will assist your meditation. Very practical. Who here has perhaps gone over to a friend's for dinner and had a huge meal and you come home and you're like, you feel heavy and thick and full? Who's had that experience? You see, the diet affected the mind. So you find many yogis will eat purely because it assists in a quieter mind. Because the food affects the prana, the udana, the vayu, the subtle air of thinking. Not only that, we're beginning to see that it makes you a lot healthier. Bill Clinton, I think, is a vegan now. And, you know, he had massive heart attacks and bypasses and stuff like that because he ate such garbage food. And what he did was a radical dietary change. You look at him now, he's quite thin. But I have been told, Sophia, you're not a doctor, are you? Nikki is a doctor. But I have been told that if you go on a purely vegan diet, you could actually remove the plaque in your arteries. Most doctors would say, nope, once it's there for good. All sorts of health benefits, as well as spiritual benefits. Now, I'm going to nuance this a bit. I rarely say you must become a vegetarian, you must become a vegan. What I do say is pay attention to your body. And you may find as you meditate more, as you study spiritual literature more, that you will naturally find your diet light. Now, probably the grossest thing you can do that will get in the way of your sadhana is drugs and alcohol. It's funny, now in 2023, we've got an echo of what I went through in the 60s, where we were all dropping acid, trying to find God. It's a dead end. Hallucinogenic drugs are a double samsara. What do I mean? The drug is an illusion about this world, which is an illusion about ultimate reality. And what does the psychedelic tell you? What you're seeing on the psychedelic is what's real.
That's my experience with it.
Pardon me?
That wasn't my experience with it.
Well, we can talk about it offline.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm not advocating by any means. Just saying that wasn't my experience.
I'm no doubt that you had an experience.
I could just see that it wasn't real while I was experiencing.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Perhaps you were a little more conscious than most. But what's real is always here, independent of any fluctuation of the mind. It's yourself. And if you did a drug trip and you said, oh, I saw the soap, but I lost it. I don't know what it is you saw, but that wasn't it. And alcohol is tamasic. It will grossify your mind. Now, let me push back on what I just said. So Swamiji used to fly first class when he would leave India and come to the United States, or usually even stop in Europe and do camps there and then come to the United States. And in first class, he would have a scotch and water. Swamiji is having an alcoholic beverage. But he'd have one when he was flying internationally. He wasn't having a cocktail every night. He wasn't going out and getting smashed on the weekends. Can you see the difference? All right, purity of diet. Did we cover everything in this one, Deepa?
Vital airs.
We talked about that. That's just a repeat.
That's it. And it just ends with all these are knowers of sacrifice, whose sins are destroyed by sacrifice.
Yeah. So, meaning an intelligent yogi has what I call the yogi's bag of tricks. Meaning you're aware of all sorts of meditative practices. Now, let me give you the rule of thumb for meditation. The grosser the mind, the more meditative supports we can use. The subtler the mind, we drop the meditative supports. You may do japa, have your mala and be chanting the name of the Lord. You may prefer to go do kirtan. I know Mike likes to do kirtan, spiritual campfire songs. Mm-hmm. The Hare Krishnas even dance. Can I have a walking meditation? Of course you can. But as your mind gets more and more subtle, you will find the meditative supports drop away. And the same person, if you get really triggered or you have a great loss or something like that, you may want to have a grosser. Gross doesn't mean bad. It just means there's more stuff. It's a lower vibration for your meditative supports to bring the mind to a central point. So here he's used the word yajna, the sacrifice, the Vedic sacrifice, all of these. And there's many more. This is an incomplete list. All sorts of others. Prayer can be another yajna. Going to Mass can be a yajna. Doing puja can be a yajna. All of these are various methods to quieten. Any questions on this partial list, but the underlying idea? Meaning, for the yogi, I engage in some object or practice, and I use it to bring my mind to a single point. And then I'm able to experience the peace, the tranquility of my essential nature. All of those are under the larger umbrella of Deva Yajna, as opposed to Brahma Yajna, which is when mind, independent of any form, any practice, can revel in its own nature. Any thoughts, questions, comments? Next verse.
Yagya shishtamrita pujo yanti brahma sanatanam nayam lokasya yagyasya kuto sanya kurusatam. The eaters of the nectar, remnant of the sacrifice, go to the eternal Brahman. Even this world is not for the non-performer of sacrifice. How then the other, O best of the Kurus?
So remember what we originally talked about in prior chapters, about this metaphor of acting in the world in the yajna spirit. So if you're in a traditional Hindu home and the mother is making dinner, what she will frequently do is take a thali of the food and take it over to the mandir, the shrine, and put it in front of the god. We serve the god first, and then we get the remnant of the sacrifice. We eat God's leftovers is the idea. So what he said earlier is the person who cooks food for their own use only verily eats sin. Meaning if I'm functioning in the world, what can I get out of it? What's in it for me? How can I get my needs met? I, me, mine, I, me, mine, I, me, mine. Krishna says that person verily eats sin. What does that mean? It grossifies the mind, makes it more and more dense. It makes ego thicker. So here, basic principle to sum up this section. We act in the world. How? According to our self-nature, our swadharma. In the yajna spirit. Do it as a meditation. Do it as seva, as service. Renouncing attachment to the fruits of action. and renouncing our identification with the sense of agency. I am not the doer. The qualities of mind and the force of the past are the doer. Or if you wish, you can say, I do nothing, I let God do it through me. I am the untouched, still witness. Next verse.
Evam bahuvida yajna vitata brahmano mukhe karma jan vidhitan tan sarva nevam yatva vimokshase. Thus innumerable sacrifices lie spread out before Brahman, literally at the mouth or face of Brahman. Know them all as born of action, and thus knowing, you shall be liberated.
So the point of the whole section, chapters 3 and 4, we do not gain freedom from inaction. Even maintenance of the body is not possible without action. The greatest gurus act, but the self in me never acts. How should I act? How can I act in a way that exhausts my vasanas without creating new ones? Remember, Krishna says, everybody is compelled to act helplessly according to their nature, their prakriti. What can restraint do? You're going to act. You're going to act according to your nature. No problem. Act, O Arjuna. That's you and me. According to our swadharma, inherent latent proclivities. Remember, he said, better one's own dharma, even if devoid of merit, rather than the dharma of another. The dharma of another is fraught with fear. Don't try to be a goody-goody. Act as you are. But do it in the yajna spirit, which we've just been discussing. Do it as a meditation. Renouncing our attachment to the fruits of action. Identification with the sense of agency. If we act in this way, spend ourselves in love, get it all out, exhaust the vasanas, and in time, the mind will easily and naturally turn in. And this is one of the greatest secrets that most people miss. They want to have a contemplative life. They want to spend time in prayer and meditation. And they are helplessly impelled into action in the world. And then they feel guilty. Oh, I guess I'm not ready for the spiritual life. Or they sit in meditation and they're not really meditating. They're planning the project for tomorrow. Or they're regretting yesterday. That's not meditation. So here Gita says, what you probably need to do is focus a bit on karma yoga for a while. And in the Christian monastic tradition, there's a great text called The Cloud of Unknowing. In it, there's an exegesis of the story of Mary and Martha. The author of the Cloud says, Martha is a metaphor for the active life of a monk. You know, plowing the fields, making wine, doing whatever you do. We do that first, and then it's followed by the contemplative life. And God calls his special friends to contemplative prayer. Same teaching we get in Gita. Any thoughts on this? All right, next verse.
Shreyan dravyamaya dyagya ajjagyanagya parantapa sarvam karmakhilam partha jnane parisamapyate. Superior is knowledge sacrifice to sacrifice with objects, O Parantapa. All actions in their entirety, O Parth, culminate in knowledge.
So in this verse, we have the expression jnana yajna, the knowledge sacrifice. Swamiji used to call his camps jnana yajnas. We would get together and study the scripture, meditate, wrestle with these ideas. This was jnana yajna, the performance of the knowledge sacrifice. So here, Krishna has shifted gears. So there's the various forms of extroverted meditation that we do. A whole list that we've been given. And now Krishna says, okay, after you've done this for a while, superior to it is the knowledge sacrifice. What is the knowledge sacrifice? Where we begin to take up the three profound questions. First, Koham, who am I? What's my essential nature? What do the scriptures say about that? Ayamatma Brahma, the self is Brahman. Tatvamasi, you are that. Well, I don't experience it yet. Engage in jnana yajna, inquiry into the nature of the self. Question number 2, what is this world? Is it something that's solid and concrete and separate from me? Or as Chandogya thunders, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, Sarvam Idam, all this is verily Kalu Brahman. It's all God, it's all consciousness. Yet I see name and form. How have they come about? By means of sankalpa, by means of imagination. This study is jnana, which Krishna here says is superior to those extroverted forms, which are important. That's why he gave them to us. then take a great leap into a much deeper study. This is a perfect time to end. What verse are we on for next week?
34.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you.